Hey everybody, what's going on? Jim Filoni here, and welcome to the next installment of the Jim Filoni vlog. I am so happy that you were able to join me today. I'm going to be ranking the Godzilla movies by era. In the previous episode of this series, I ranked the Showa era, the original era, ranging from 1954 to I think 78, no, 75 was when Terror of Mechagodzilla came out. So that particular area, 15 films. Today, though, I'm going to be talking about the Heisei era. This is a much smaller list of movies because not as many came out during this time period because it went from 1984 to 1998. We're going to just go ahead and jump on in before my voice gives out. So, starting with number 7, we're going to be talking about the return of Godzilla. This was Godzilla's big comeback, and I do enjoy the movie quite a bit. I think I enjoy the cheesy American re-edit of it a little bit more, just due simply based on nostalgia, because that was the one that was the first Godzilla movie I ever saw. And it made me a fan of Godzilla, but I do like the more serious tone of this particular film. I like the suit. I think some of the animatronic work, didn't age that particularly well. But I think as at the time, modern update of the Godzilla story, it's very enjoyable, and I like that it's a sequel to the original Gojira and not just trying to reboot it. So that I enjoy that a lot. It ignores all the movies after the original Gojira, so it's just a direct sequel to that, which is perfectly fine in my opinion. Number 6 is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Now, this particular naming is really confusing because as a kid, I just assumed that this was a direct sequel to the Showa era Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but no. For some reason, when it was brought over to the West, they called it Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, but it's not a sequel. They just, instead of just calling it Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, they wanted to avoid confusion, I guess, with the original film. So they just called it Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, when technically it isn't even that, because there was a sequel to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla called Terror of Mechagodzilla, and in that particular movie, the robot is called Mechagodzilla 2. So this should technically be Mechagodzilla 3, and that's just where the small headaches of this movie really begin. It's still a very enjoyable movie, though. I do like the suits, I like the fights, I like that Rodan gets like an upgrade to Fire Rodan, and it's just a fun movie. But it's definitely just a great watch, and I really do like this particular version of Mechagodzilla. It was my favorite until Kiryu came out in the 2000s. Number 5 for me is, and I have to say, just because this is number 5 doesn't mean it's bad. None of these movies are bad in my opinion, but when you have banger after banger after banger, you have to list them in a way that you have a top 7 list, and unfortunately some just end up lower on the totem pole, and that is Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Now, this film is somewhat controversial to some Godzilla fans, but I absolutely love the film, and I love the Space Godzilla monster. I think it's a very unique take on a Godzilla adversary, having it not be just some like robot clone or whatever. It's Godzilla's like dark reflection almost, if like Godzilla was, warped by a black hole, which basically what happened to his DNA and what's created Space Godzilla. Just a very cool monster, and I love that monster design so much that I'm willing to overlook some of the more goofy parts of the story, just because I enjoy Space Godzilla as a monster so much. Number 4 is Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. I really enjoy this one. It's got a time travel plot to it. in which these people from the future say that they are there to basically wipe Godzilla from the timeline so Japan isn't destroyed by Godzilla in the future. But what actually ends up happening is that they are kind of, invaders. And when they go back in time to move Godzilla from the explosion, they leave these little like puffball creatures or whatever, and they're the ones that get irradiated, and they turn into the mighty King Ghidorah. And they are attempting to take over Earth at that point, and somehow a new Godzilla appears just by accident, and it leads to a climactic battle. Ghidorah is destroyed by Godzilla, but then Godzilla goes on a rampage. So they have to quickly rebuild Ghidorah as Mecha King Ghidorah, and it's just insanity. It's like Terminator and Back to the Future and all these other like time travel movies mixed together in one. It's a very fun watch. It's very cheesy, very corny, but I love it to death. My number three for the Heisei era is Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth. In this particular film, Godzilla returns to being a villain, and Mothra and Batra both appear. And the movie's supposed to be about those two, fighting for the fate of the Earth. But then, of course, Godzilla shows up, and now these two arch rivals have to team up to take out Godzilla, who is threatening the balance of the world. It's kind of a fun watch to see that, because you think Batra, is this like going to be the main villain, got an evil Mothra creature basically. But no, he ends up having to team up with Mothra. They fight Godzilla, and it's just really cool to see, and it leads to Godzilla versus Space Godzilla directly. So that's pretty fun, and this was actually the highest grossing Godzilla film until Shin Godzilla dropped. So that's kind of amazing to see, and this is a movie that I don't feel like gets enough love. So you should definitely check it out, especially if you're getting into the older Godzilla films. Basically, any of the movies on this list are worth watching, in my opinion. Especially if you're, I would say that especially if you're someone like me who's trying to get other people into Godzilla, the older Godzilla films, I think the 90s era is the perfect era to start with. It's not as goofy as the Showa era. And the Millennium era, well, we'll talk about the Millennium era when we get to it. I just feel like the 90s era perfectly encapsulates what was the best part about the suit era of Godzilla. Number two is Godzilla versus Biollante. I love this movie. I loved it ever since I first saw the VHS cover for it at a friend of my mom's house who just happened to have it for some reason. And when I finally saw it, I was really blown away. And I think Biollante is a really cool monster. I think it sucks that Biollante hasn't been utilized in any major capacity since then. Thankfully, she's appeared in a couple video games here and there, particularly the Wii version of Godzilla Unleashed. But that's about all we've gotten. And there's so many creative avenues that you could do with Biollante. I wrote a what if scenario, a sequel scenario to Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, many, many years ago on a channel that doesn't even exist anymore. And basically I had, Shin Godzilla turn into Biollante. And then there's this fan film that came out recently where kind of the same thing happens, where Biollante turns into Shin Godzilla before taking on the final form of the Biollante at the end of the movie, of the original movie. So there's a lot of love for Biollante out there in the community for sure, and I would love to see Biollante come back. I was kind of hoping that we would see Biollante in the MonsterVerse, but it seems like the next film is going to feature probably Space Godzilla or Gigan, which is fine, I suppose, especially if it's Space Godzilla. But I hope Biollante gets some time in the sun. And then for me, finally, the number one movie of the Heisei era is Godzilla versus Destroyer. Destroyer is, or Destroyer, as it is in the original Japanese, is basically the culmination of the sins of humanity, almost. Destroyer is a monster that was created by the Oxygen Destroyer used against the original Godzilla in 1954. Basically, it mutated some kind of like ancient crab creature, and ever since then, it's just been growing and mutating and reforming. Now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because of the time travel element, because, going by the post Ghidorah timeline, the 1954 Godzilla shouldn't have happened, but that's a small hiccup that continues to occur with the Heisei era in terms of continuity and whatnot. They seem to forget that, oh wait, they wiped out 1954 from the timeline in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, but that's neither here or there. The monster fights are the most intense that they have been in this particular era of the franchise. We have a cool new design for Godzilla, Burning Godzilla, who is my absolute favorite form of Godzilla. And I just absolutely love the design of Destroyer. I first came across Destroyer in Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee, and I was intimidated by that thing when I first came up against it. And then when I finally saw the movie like a year or so later, I was blown away. I was blown away. It brought in elements of Alien. It brought in elements of just other giant monsters, and it was just really, really cool to see. And it's still one of the most iconic monsters, in my opinion, when it comes to the Toho canon. And I hope that one day the MonsterVerse will see Destroyer finally show up. And I really hope that it's just as awesome and just as cool. But anyway, that is my personal ranking of the Heisei era Godzilla films. What did you guys think of the Heisei era, and what are your favorite films from this particular line of Godzilla? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Until next time, I am Jim Filoni, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.